Live, brought to you on Body, Mind, Spirit Radio on every third Tuesday of the month. Discover the cosmic message for this age revealed through legendary master of yoga and world-renowned medium Dr. George King between 1954 and 1997. Now today, your host Chrissy Blaze will be joined by a guest who has appeared on the Sirius Radio Live before, Julian Rother, who's a staff member who's just moved from the UK to the USA to work full-time at the American headquarters of the Sirius Society. He's among the regular presenters of the King Yoga Experience events, as well as an experienced lecturer for over many years. And they will be covering a topic that is most definitely one of the most talked about subjects, latest UFO news around the world. So, without further ado, I will hand you over to Chrissy and Julian.
Well, thank you very much, Chrissy. Hi there.
Thank you. Hi, Chrissy.
A warm welcome to you, Julian, and all the listeners of Sirius Radio Live. One thing I have to ask you, Chrissy, how are you surviving in London with the heat wave?
Oh, well, surviving quite well, thank you very much. It is, but it is a bit of a concern, obviously, for those who are sort of more vulnerable to it. But it is very, very hot, so we're just trying to keep in the shade and drinking lots and lots of water. So it's it's just about bearable, just about, but just have to keep indoors. Yeah, but thanks for asking. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy you're okay. It's worrying, I know. With all the waves and fires and everything in Europe. That's what we sort of get on the news all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some very exciting topics that we're going to be covering. But first of all, you may be wondering where my government of British origin is by, and currently busy with talking to Sirius Society work. She's also been very busy with radio and TV shows lately, including the most listened to paranormal radio show in the world, apart from this one, of course, Coast to Coast AM, where he did fascinating 2-hour show on UFOs in the constant contact with Dr. George King. But interestingly, during the show, George Lurie, the host there, and Richard's been on the show several times, said for the first time ever that Dr. George King is way ahead of his time. And he didn't just say it once, he said it several times. Of course, we know in the Ethereum Society that is true, but to hear that going out to millions of people around the world, that's great. So well done for that, Richard. And as a result of that interview, I've been invited on a Californian TV show called California Haunts, I think it is. And he also has been doing a lot of shows in England, including the very popular TV show with James Whale and more. But I'd like to begin with a news flash, as often we do at Sirius Radio Live, by saying a few words about the latest positive developments in the world. Yes, there are positive developments, and you may look at what's happening in the world news and be very depressed. Not surprisingly, we see war, we see terrorism, we see disasters of every kind taking place right now. But what we don't see so much of in the mainstream are some very exciting, very positive things that are happening, one of which we're going to cover today. But one thing that certainly caught the eye and the imagination of millions of people last week were the first images from the NASA's James Webb Telescope in partnership with the European and Canadian Space Agency. And you will have, I'm sure you will have seen them. These images were absolutely gorgeous and show the wonderful splendor and vastness of the universe. Everywhere you look, there are galaxies after galaxies. And apparently the very first image, which I believe was the size of a grain of sand, comprised thousands of galaxies. I'm in the vastness with all this awe-inspiring paraphrasing here, looking at the sale signs in shop windows. While we have to deal with our exercise, I'm sure, we have to deal with these things, but it's also vitally important to look up for a higher self, the cosmos above, and what's going on up there, what we're going to be talking about today. Let's really put things in perspective, don't you think, Julia?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And I think probably most people do it. It's really, it's mind-boggling. It's about as mind-boggling as things can get. Think of this idea of holding a grain of sand at arm's reach, and then all of these galaxies are within that. And you think, how many grains of sand could you hold at arm's reach before you covered the sky? And each one of them is just filled with galaxies. It's just endless. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and there's still debate about whether there's something life out there, which is even more incredible, I think.
It is. It's really incredible. One thing I think is interesting is this is they because of obviously the time it takes for light to travel, they think that they're able to see back millions of years this light that's reaching us from these galaxies that we now see. It could have. I've seen one article talked about it. It's 13.5 billion years since that light has been traveling from our source. So we're really looking back into time, and they talk about potentially looking back to see the origins of the universe. I don't really see how that sort of makes sense to me, but it is fascinating to kind of think about it in the sense of time as well as space.
Yeah, and I think it's great that people are thinking about this too. Now, one thing that's also very exciting is that things are heating up globally on the UFO front. Last month, that's right, June 24th, was the 75th anniversary of the day when Kenneth Arnold saw several UFOs near Mount Rainier, and that, from then on, it became the flying saucers. So you could say that's the beginning of the flying saucers of modern times, although we know they've been coming to this Earth for many thousands of years. Also, July the 2nd was World UFO Day, so we're sort of in the middle of around this time thinking about these topics. The first flying saucer was in 1947. After that, there were several genuine contactees in the early 50s, which were later confirmed by the Cosmic Masters through Dr. King, including the well-known George Stanford, and of course our master, George King. And as most listeners will know, he received over 600 transmissions from the Cosmic Masters, and there were many prophecies which have come true. There was one interesting one, wasn't there, Julie? We were talking about earlier about how governments will suggest that UFOs are threats. And this is happening now, especially in the US. Is there anything you can tell us more about that, Julie?
Yeah, I think this is. I think the one you referred to is a transmission received by Dr. King in 1958 and published in the Enduring Society's Journal Cosmic Voice at the time, issue 16, from a being we know as the pseudonym Mars Sector 6. And although it was relevant at the time, I think this prophecy is really going to become almost more relevant as time goes by and it becomes more and more proven, as you say. I'll just read a short extract here from it. He said, I would warn you though, when some governments are forced by the masses to come forward with an admission of our existence, they will try to prove to their people that we are unfriendly. I warn you about this before it happens, so that you may be forearmed by this foreknowledge. And yeah, we really are seeing that. Happening today in two ways, I think. Because what Martin says here is when some governments are forced by the masses to come forward with an admission of our existence, so they will have to admit that UFOs exist, and we're kind of starting to see that happening at the moment. And then the second part of that, of course, is that they will try, and the word try was involved in this will try to prove that they are unfriendly. We see that happening alongside it, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I know in the USA, where we are, they aren't talking publicly about UFOs as a threat, but the good thing is they're studying the topic, and I suspect, I'm absolutely sure, in their closed sessions that they have, the story is very different. Just talking about the USA, we'll start here, shall we? Just last month, continuing from discussions held last year with the Pentagon, the Congress, and the Ministry of Defense, one of the subjects of the House has a massive, House Intelligence, which has a massive long name, which I don't even begin to remember what it was, but they conducted public hearings on more than 100 diaries by military pilots over the last 20 years of what they call, now called a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, which to me do that, I don't know if you agree, they're just trying to distance themselves from the UFO, I'm sure, by giving them another name. Because it's all the same, whatever you call them. UFOs, flying saucers, UAPs, okay. They like UAPs, so that's fine. So they have been reported to be flying all manner of inexplicable to our science ways, bobbing and weaving and hovering and changing direction with head-snapping speed that would produce deadly G-forces to any living being, almost any human being inside. So it's a lot of fantastic things are going on, and they are studying, and also some of America's best astrophysicists are taking it seriously, and NASA's launching a real-time study into the whole subject. But one thing I've noticed is the U.S. government doesn't like to use the word extraterrestrial, certainly as I say, not to the public. Again, probably they do in their current session. Is there anything else I'm getting certain about what's going on here? So I know that you've been studying it as well, Judith, so perhaps fill us in on anything else that's happening now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned NASA there. I think that's very interesting. NASA, of course, now has a guy called Bill Nelson who's heading it. He's a former senator, and he's also a former astronaut. He's spent 6 days in orbit of Earth on the Columbia space shuttle, and that's between I think it was the 80s. But he's kind of got the experience in space, and as we know, astronauts, by and large, tend to be quite sort of affected at quite a deep level by the experience of getting up in space, as you'd imagine. Travel, the old saying, travel borders the mind. Well, if you have to travel into space, it must be very, very cool in the mind. So Bill Nelson is now heading NASA, and he has spoken to some of these Navy pilots who have seen UFOs, and, he's spoken to this person, and he's coming out and saying that he believes that they really saw something genuine. He's backing them. And it's fantastic to have someone in such a position as him believing that, and not only believing that, but actually having the courage to come out and, put his head on the line, put his reputation on the line, and say this. So I don't know if it was him, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was him who's sort of nudging NASA in the direction of this study that you mentioned that they're going to do to kind of review the current literature out there about UFOs or UAPs. I have seen that the budget for this study is only $100,000, which is not much in terms of doing a big study of UFOs, but I have also say that it's preliminary as well. So I think that's a very positive sign. Another thing that I think is very interesting on the US front is that, as you mentioned, this report came out, and there's some really interesting moves happening. But one thing that's happening now is again, it's one of these reports that has a very long name. I might get wrong, but essentially it's legislation about the Defense Act expenditure for next year. And there's an amendment that has been now passed, I think it was just last week, by the House of Representatives here, and that's one step in a process, but nevertheless it's progressing. UFOs. And it's going to, some people may feel that they have this information, but they feel may feel restrained because they've signed these kind of non-disclosure secrecy type of agreements. So they feel that they can't come forward with this information because they'll be prosecuted, imprisoned, and so on for breaking the laws that they are bound by. But this legislation will, two things.